Hello, this is going to be a discussion over the book Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning, published in 1992. So first thing is what you should be doing is you should be reading the chapter that I have assigned for you before you watch this video. If you do not read this first, or if you do not read that first, it's going to be a little bit hard to kind of understand what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about it, and why I'm talking about that. So make sure you read chapter 7 from this book, Ordinary Men. That is going to be uploaded onto Google Classroom. It's also going to be uploaded on the class website. So what I've done right through here is I've put the individual every page from this chapter uploaded here, highlighted some of the important stuff, added some discussion points off to the side. I'm just going to kind of focus on these and expand upon some of these things, why they're talked about the way they are, and really the significance that's going to come from there. So let's dive right on in. First and foremost, if you want to understand this section of the book, you really need to understand the characters involved. And the major character in this book is Major Wilhelm Trapp. Okay? Major Wilhelm Trapp is a German policeman, and he's going to be the commander of Police Battalion 101. Everything that's talked about in this book, Ordinary Men, is going to be focusing on the actions taken by Police Battalion 101 during World War II. So Major Trapp is going to be the leader of this group, and he's going to be a World War I veteran. So he's got military experience fighting in these really intense kind of conflicts before. He's already been there, and he joined the Nazi Party in December 1932. Now we remember from history that December of 1933, or that in 1933, I believe it was March, the Nazis are going to come to power in the Reichstag. Now he's going to join that party right before then, so he definitely believes in the Nazi ideology. Some of this is going to be just a little bit of him being an opportunist, but regardless, the fact of the matter is that Wilhelm Trapp is a member of the Nazi Party. Additionally, we need to know that this is going to take place in the city of Józefów, Poland. Okay, it's a little village located just outside of Warsaw. Warsaw being a major city inside of Poland. You can see it on this map right through here. So there's the major character, the man who's leading Police Battalion 101. Here's the location, and now we're going to dive into what actually happens here. Okay. First and foremost, we need to talk about the initiation to mass murder. Okay, this chapter is titled The Initiation to Mass Murder, the Józefów Massacre. So what you can see here in this picture, and the reason I picked this particular picture, is this is going to be the men rounding the different Jews up in the marketplace here and getting ready to march them into the forest and kill them. As you have already heard when you read this chapter, you hear about some of these brutalities that are happening. This is a picture taken on that day. Now, a couple things I want you to note. Number one is the fear in the man's eyes as he's sitting there begging literally for his life. Secondly, if you look at that Nazi soldier over there, the one who was facing the camera, almost got kind of a smirk on his face, got like a little bit of an evil look going on right through there. And you also can notice the stick in his hand. He would have used that to beat them if they were anyone stepping out of line, kind of to keep them in line, treating them again like cattle, which was something that happened often during the Holocaust. The Nazis often treated their victims like cattle and not like people. And this is going to really show again exactly what's going on there. First thing we're going to be talking about though is Lublin. Okay, as I already said, Lublin is going to be the city where this takes place. Lublin is a city in southeastern Poland, and in the Lublin district, okay, which Józefów is a member of, or part of the Lublin district, the Nazis are going to have a series of different war camps. A lot of atrocities are going to happen in the Lublin district, but this is going to be taking place within the Lublin district. So it's important to understand exactly where this is taking place. Okay, if we turn the page, we're going to look right through here. Bookman, then 38 years old, was the head of a family lumber business in Hamburg. He had joined the Nazi Party in May of 1937. So this is again talking about, and this section is important because it's kind of just explaining the fact that the men who are going to be perpetrating this evil massacre, okay, this just genocide of people into the forest, they're not necessarily brutal, bloodthirsty killers. They're actually just kind of average people who are going to go about and commit these horrible atrocities. One of the things that often comes up when people discuss the Holocaust is how did the German people let this happen? This book, I think, does a really good job of explaining kind of how that happens. It's not necessarily a bunch of people who are all evil and wanting to do horrible things, as we often kind of think that we would never have this happen today because we're not like this. And this is really showing that the people who did this before the war happened, they were average people just like you and I who ended up committing some very, very brutal crimes during the war. So it's important to understand that this group of people, particularly the individuals in Police Battalion 101, were not necessarily made up of bloodthirsty killers, but average people, as we can see right through here with this individual. Okay. Additionally, right through here, he joined the Nazi Party in May of 1937. Many people go ahead and join the Nazi Party early on in the process. During like the 1920s, early 1930s. Anyone who joins the Nazi Party before the 1933 election is known as an old party Nazi. Now it's going to be broken up into new party Nazis and old party Nazis. Old party Nazis are those who joined initially. They tend to be ones who are very fervent and in the Nazi beliefs, very in-depth and understand what Nazis are talking about and really kind of agree with that. New party Nazis definitely have that sense to them, but new party Nazis tend to not necessarily be as loyal. A lot more of them joined the party simply as an opportunist trying to make the best out of the situation compared to those who joined early on when the Nazis were really considered an outside political party. They're the ones who fervently believe in the cause. Okay, so Bookman, as we can see right here, this member of the head of the family lumber business in Hamburg, one of these ordinary men, he was a new party Nazi. He wasn't one of the old party Nazis. Joins in May of 1937, just a couple years before World War II, excuse me, is really going to start taking place. Right here in this chapter, or in this section, we see that it was possible for people to refuse to participate in such horrific actions. Bookman is one of these individuals who simply refuses to take place in the killing. He understands that this is wrong, and he says, I am not going to do this. Now, this is not something that happened a lot, but it is something that did happen. This is also going to be important, particularly when we understand Chapter 7 of Ordinary Men, is because it tells us that a lot of these men knew the actions they were taking were wrong, and yet they did it anyways. Okay, Bookman knows that this is wrong. He's going to step out of the actual killing because he could not, as he states, he would in no case participate in such an action in which defenseless women and children are shot. So he's not going to do this. A lot of people will, but it's going to show that these individuals know what is happening and they know that these actions are wrong. Okay, right here we see the peer pressure that a lot of individuals are going to be feeling, okay, during this one. The second company's Sergeant Hendrik Steinitz is going to step forward and say he doesn't want to see any cowards, basically saying, man up, you've got to do this, don't be a coward. You are in the military, you need to act like you're in the military. In the military, sometimes you have to kill, don't be afraid of that, you've got this, don't be a coward. Realize that this individual massacre that we're talking about here in this chapter happens early on in the war, meaning these men have recently been joined together in this platoon. They've not been with each other for a very long time. They're kind of trying to size each other up right now, which is going to increase that peer pressure. You don't want to seem weak initially, or it's going to look very bad for you, especially if you're going to be with these men for a series throughout the war. You need to seem strong. So this is going to be a little bit more of that peer pressure, which is making some of these men commit these actions they wouldn't necessarily normally do because of the peer pressure that's going to be involved in the process. Okay, if we look right through here, okay, we're going to look right at this initial top thing. Okay, this section right here. After explaining the battalion's murderous assignment, he, which is Trapp, made his extraordinary offer to any of the older men who did not feel up to the task before them could step out. This is going to be important because it shows us that Trapp himself is not necessarily wanting to do this task that he has been assigned. It's also significant and it's also going to be important because it shows us that Trapp, who is the leader of this group, understands that what is happening is wrong, yet he is still going to go through with these orders, okay? Next, we're going to look right through here. This is going to be talking about, again, when one of the men is going to step out his commander steps forward and kind of just starts berating him. And this is going to begin talking about the peer pressure that these individuals feel. So number one, peer pressure is very, very prevalent. They do not want to look like cowards. Worse, a lot of the officers or people there felt that the offer the officers were giving them wasn't necessarily a genuine offer to not step out, but a way of trying to weed out the cowards and get them into a trick. Trap is going to step out and defend this individual, and then others are going to start doing the same because they're going to see that this actually isn't a trick. Other people are going to be stepping out and doing this, so then they're going to feel comfortable doing this after this point. Again, they're going to take them all to the marketplace, and the reason they're going to take them to the marketplace is it's a lot easier to control and sort the Jews when you have them in a marketplace compared to where you have them in their individualized homes. It's going to be easier to pick your work Jews and those you're going to kill when they're all located in the same area. It's also a lot easier to control them when they are all in the same location. It's going to be important here because it talks about the elderly and the infants were to be killed on the spot. This is simply because it was very challenging to transport them into the forest. They did not think it would be worth transporting the elderly who couldn't really walk, just killed them in their homes. The same with the infants right through there. Getting into some of the more kind of disgusting graphic thing in this one. In this book, we do hear a lot about how a number of the men, at least when they were testifying about this 20 years later after the war, said they did not actually go ahead and kill any of the infants, which certainly could have happened. We do know a number of infants were killed. A lot of them were shot, but some of the more bloodthirsty and kind of cruel, devout Nazis would just pick them up and smash them against a wall as a way of killing the infants, making it even more brutal and horrific. Doing this in front of their parents or their families are forced to watch their child being murdered in a very brutal fashion. So they're going to, for the most part, they're ordered to leave the infants and the elderly in their homes, kill them on the spot. Everyone else, they will march into the town square, where they will then separate them and then transport them into the forest to massacre them. Here is a picture of the marketplace in Józefów, Poland. A more recent picture of it, just so you can kind of get a visual of where this is all happening and where this is taking place. Of course, you see the memorial sitting here. Now, that would not have been here at this time. It would have just been kind of like an open town square. The forest, okay, you're going to take them into the forest, and I get a lot of questions on why the forest. This is a way to keep it kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's important to remember that this village is not full of just Jews. They're not killing everyone in the village. They're just killing the Jews. If you kill them in the middle of the town, you might have a Polish uprising because this is a brutal thing. They don't really want to see this happening. They know it's happening, but they don't want to see it happen. Okay, moving on to page 58. Right through here, okay, Trap is never there. This is allegedly because he cannot bear the sight of what's happening. This is the reason that Trap is going to give the men an option to step away and to not participate in the killings because he understands that he himself doesn't necessarily want to be there. It's wrong of him to force other people to do this task that he doesn't want to do either. Additionally, this is important because it shows us that Trap again realizes what he is ordering his men to do is wrong, yet he again is doing nothing to stop it. He is in a position where he could step up and stop this, and he is not doing it. So again, that's going to be important to understand. Any possible deniability of Trap not really knowing that this was wrong, if he tried to do that later on, is really going to be thrown out the door because he's demonstrating that yes, he knew what he was doing was wrong and going from there. This order one right here, Trap's talking about, man, such jobs don't suit me, but orders are orders. This is going to be important to understand that this is an argument made by virtually all Nazis after the war when they would have been arrested and tried for their war crimes, simply as a defense of their actions. They're going to be saying that they were given this order, and the reason they did the horrible things they were doing wasn't because they wanted to, but because orders are orders, and as a member of the military, you have to follow orders. Now, that is true to a point. You do have to follow orders. However, per international law, you are required to reject orders that are unethical. Clearly, Trap knows that this order that he has been given is not ethical, and we can see that documented time and time again by the way he is acting. However, Trap does it anyways. He does not care. He is doing these horrible things that he should not be doing, and this is exactly how we can see that happening right through here. So it's going to be the argument that orders are orders. However, that's not how this actually is going to end up working out. The Jewish business, okay, this quote is important, right, when we're looking through here, okay. If this Jewish business is ever avenged on earth, then have mercy on us Germans. Trapp feels guilty for what is happening. He knows that this is wrong, and he's talking about that right through here. Then have mercy on us Germans, realizing that what we're doing, if this ever gets, like, if the Jews ever have a chance to get even with us, we are just in such a bad position as Germans. Because he realizes the full scale of the brutality that's happening here. He realizes what's going on is problematic, and he realizes that this is wrong. Okay. Additionally, it's important to understand that this is a small town. Okay, so everyone in this town knows what's going on the moment they hear gunshots coming out. When they're getting driven out into the town, Jews who have not yet been round up know that they're about to be round up. They're going to probably try to hide to a point, but there's really nowhere to go. Non-Jews are also going to be realizing what is happening. This is going to be people in their neighborhood who they have probably lived next to for years. Their families have known each other for years. They're probably friends, business partners, stuff like that. They're realizing that they're all about to be round up and murdered. So this is really kind of it's a small town. Everyone knows everyone. It's a significant event, and everyone knows what is happening in this town at this point. Okay, moving on to the next page. Right through here, only 2 admitted to having shot, though no one admitted to actually having seen the shooting take place. This is talking about old people and really a bunch of different people in their homes going to the hospital, okay, and just shooting the people in the hospital. This doesn't add up. There are way more bodies that are being accounted for, people being murdered, than there are people admitting to doing the murdering. This means a number of different things. Number one, the people who are doing the actual shooting are most likely not being honest when they're testifying about this later, or they have simply blocked that from their memory, so they're not talking about it. They're lying about their role. They're probably feeling very bad about their role in this because they're realizing, again, that this was wrong. Also, it looks really bad if you go in and just kill people sitting in a hospital. This is, again, kind of talking a little bit more about that. This one right through here shows the fact that killers at least had some remorse for what they were doing. Not all of them, but a lot of them are going to have some remorse. This is also important because it shows that they know it is wrong, and they know that it is wrong, especially to shoot babies. Okay, the fact that they're saying they wouldn't shoot the babies is showing that they know this is wrong. Okay, even though they're Jewish and they consider Jews the enemy, they're going to be considering under Nazi ideology that Jews are subhuman. They're going to be realizing that it's wrong to shoot an infant. You simply don't kill an infant. The fact that so many of these killers who were happy to kill the adults or the older ones, not necessarily even happy, but willing to do it, were not willing to shoot the babies. And this is going to be explaining that they realize what they're doing is wrong, okay? There is no point in resisting allowing the women to take their babies into town with them. Again, they were ordered to kill the elderly and the babies on the spot in their homes versus having the mothers take them with them or trying to work with the elderly to get them to go to the forest. But the mothers simply refused to be separated from their child. And as a result of this, it really wasn't worth the extra work by the Nazis to separate the mother from the child. So they simply allowed the mother to take their child with them. Also, allowing this is going to keep the mother a lot more calm, and that is going to be crucial for the efficiency the Nazis are trying to use during this process. They need to be efficient. If they're calm, the people who are about to be killed are calm. It's a lot easier to get them to do what you want them to do. So they're going to use the mothers with their babies as a way of kind of controlling them, allowing them to murder both of them later on. This is also an instance of soldiers stepping up and going against their orders. They were ordered to shoot the elderly and they were ordered to shoot the infants at the home. However, they did not do that. So the question I would ask to all of you is, if they went against orders here, why did they not go against orders when they were ordered to shoot them in the forest? Those two things don't align. You cannot go against orders in one way and say you did a horrible act because orders are orders in another situation. That simply does not add up. Moving on to the next page, okay, right through here. This is going to be demonstrating exactly how they're going to want to kill the individuals. Okay, so as it's talking about, he drew an outline on the ground for the soldiers to see of the human head from this kind of angle right through here, and put a mark right where they should fix their bayonet, the knife on the end of their rifle. It's going to be that bump on the top of your neck right through here. That's going to be where the bayonet would be placed. The bullet would then be fired into the back of your neck, hitting you in your brainstem, killing you instantly. The work Jews, the Nazis were using able-bodied Jews as slave laborers. Okay, they're going to use these people. Often they're going to work them to exhaustion. So just because you're selected as a worker doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to be killed by the Nazis. More than anything, it's just delaying the death. You're not going to be shot today. You're going to be worked to death and eventually die from overwork later in a couple months, maybe a year if you're lucky. So simply going to be delaying this. The Nazis needed a lot of workers to make sure they could produce stuff to keep up with their war effort. They're not going to be working themselves. They're going to be having the people they capture, the Jews, anyone else who considered one of their undesirables. They're going to be the ones doing the hard labor for you. Right through here, okay, after the first salvos, which is the first round of gunshots, grave unrest grew among the craftsmen, and some of the men threw themselves on the ground weeping. It had become clear at this point in the families that were left behind were being shot. So those that were selected as workers are now realizing that their families have either just been shot or are about to be shot. And they're going to be responding to this as anyone would respond when they realize their family is about to be murdered. They're taking it very, very hard, and we can understand why that would be happening. They're going to take these work Jews to the train station and load them into train cars. Okay, so the Nazis are going to transport the Jews in any of one they capture and try to send to a camp in train cars. These train cars are oftentimes cattle cars. It does talk about how a passenger car was available here, but that would not have been for the Jews. That would have been for the officers. They're going to be packed into this cattle car, standing room only, with no heating, no food, no water, and no toilet. These individual Jews who were coming from Josepho were lucky that their destination was not very far away. Throughout the war, a number of Jews would be put into these train cars for up to 3 to 4 days. In the wintertime, many died from freezing to death, and many died from overheating in the summertime because there was no heat, there was no air conditioning, no food, no water, and no toilet. So very, very harsh conditions inside of that train car. Okay, so the execution sites. This is going to be a picture of just simply one of the trails that they would have been marched down near one of the execution sites in Josepho. So this is like put up here just so you can kind of see exactly what's happening, get a visual of where this whole thing is going to be taking place. As I stated kind of earlier, they're going to pick them in the forest, and this is to keep these sites out of mind. You also want to keep the Jews away from the previous site. So the first group of Jews to be shot, the next group, you're going to move them just past or just before where the previous site was killed. That's going to keep them calm. If they walk up and they see the first group to go by, their bodies lying on the ground, dead, it's going to cause a lot of panic. You don't want to keep them panic. You want to keep them calm. They do know what's happening, but you definitely want to try to keep them calm and avoid that kind of sight, because it's easier to stay calm when you know you're about to be killed versus seeing exactly how you're about to be killed. So the Nazis are going to be very focused on that right through there. The Nazis are trying to be as efficient as possible during this entire thing. As I already talked about, they want to keep the Jews calm because it allows them to work in a much more efficient manner. One bullet versus having to shoot them as they're running away using multiple bullets. Keep them calm, have them lie face down in a row, walk up behind them, and simply shoot them at the spot already talked about. So they're going to be as efficient as humanly possible. It's also important to understand that at some point during this whole thing, these shooters were given a large supply of alcohol. And this is going to be a common occurrence during the Holocaust for those who are committing these horrible crimes. The Nazis do institute a large supply of alcohol. This is important and kind of interesting for a number of reasons. Number one, Hitler was very, very opposed to alcoholics. So it's interesting that he's going to be providing alcohol to his soldiers and his murderers. But the reason he's doing this is it allows them to kind of relax and be okay with the killing. The saying is like to numb the pain, where you just drink to the point where you don't feel anything anymore. These soldiers are realizing that what they're doing is wrong. They're having a hard time struggling with that internally, because morally they realize that this is wrong. The alcohol allows them to kind of forget that and move on. So the alcohol is going to be brought in as a way of kind of like, hey, calm down. It's going to be all right, even though they know what they're doing is definitely wrong. Okay. Right here, this shows that Calmer, like Trapp, is another one who understands that this is wrong. Okay, talking about what's going on, he's going to be reassigning them to a different thing. So he's another man who's got a lot of power. Trapp is the one who's in charge of everyone. Calmer has a lot of power as well, and Calmer also realized that this is wrong. So this is two individuals who have a lot of power within Police Battalion 101, who realize the actions they are taking are wrong, and yet they do nothing to stop it from happening. Individual policemen are going to be shooting past different individuals, and some of them are going to be hiding in the garden of the town's Catholic priest until they get to the point where they're like, someone might catch us, this might be bad, we got to go act like we were here the whole time. This again is showing the fact that many don't want to do this. A lot of these individuals who are a member of Police Battalion 101 don't want to partake in this killing. They did not step out earlier, most likely because of peer pressure. They know this is wrong, so they're going to simply hide, or they're going to shoot past individuals. Regardless, though, they did allow this to happen. There is some guilt by association here. Yes, it might not necessarily be as morally wrong as actually being the one to fire the shots. The fact of the matter is people were murdered, they knew it was happening, and they could have stopped it, and they did nothing. Okay, right through here, as the first company is going to depart to the woods, the Jews are going to hear what's happening, and they're going to go and have a great sense of calm, which the witnesses who were German described this as unbelievable and astonishing. This is an example of dying with dignity. The Jews realized that they're about to die, and oftentimes it's discussed as, why did they not resist? There are so many more of them, and I don't really know this. I don't think anyone understands this until you're put in that position, and God willing, you will never be put in that position. But most likely it was a way of trying to remain with some sense of human dignity, human decency. They probably spent this time praying, talking with their loved ones, and letting them know that they were there together. And they are realizing, though, in the meantime, they're about to be murdered simply because of their religion. Moving on right through here, Trapp is going to reach the decision and give new orders once he realizes that the killing is not happening fast enough. Even though he personally opposes it, he's going to actually order the death of more Jews. This is one way that Trapp could have kind of slowed this down if he doesn't want this to happen and just stop at night, but everyone was left, just let him live. Trapp doesn't do that. He's going to give orders and make this happen faster. So even though he's personally opposed to this, his whole claim that orders are orders kind of, again, falls apart right through here because he's going about making this worse. Moving on to the next page, okay, this huge section right through here. This is a kind of gruesome section, and this is talking about the actual barbarity of what is happening. So make sure you read this again. I'd recommend you pause this video here and read what's going on. But it's what's being happening here is they're talking about what happens if you fire too high. If you hit them in the back of the skull, you're at such close range, it's going to cause the skull to really kind of explode with brain matter, blood, and bone fragment covering those nearby, bone splinters everywhere. It's going to be a very, very gruesome thing to be happening. So it's really kind of why they're shooting him in the back of the neck compared to up top. This is going to really show the full scale of the brutality that is happening and the barbarity that is happening during this whole event known as the Holocaust. Moving on to the next section right through here. The shooters were gruesomely researched with blood, brains, and bone splinters. It hung on their clothing. Again, this is a very visual kind of image that, although disturbing and hard to really understand, I think it's important to understand this because it shows exactly how violent this truly was. It shows what was happening, how wrong this was, and yet individuals are still going to be doing this. Even though they're witnessing things like this happening, they're still going to be doing this. Right through here, it's going to show again that many of the killers recognized the Jews they were killing were actually people, not not like these animalistic people, subhumans like the Nazis were trying to paint them. They're actually going to be humans, and they're realizing that what they're doing is hard, what they're doing is wrong, and they should not be doing this. Nevertheless, some continue with the killing. Right through here, okay? This saying right through here, calling them shitheads and weaklings. This is going to talk about, again, the peer pressure that is involved. Remember, they've not been a battalion for a very long time. They don't want to look weak. Those that do step out are going to be insulted by their fellow members of the battalion and mocked by their peers. And this is a real example of this. So a lot of them, even though they might personally be opposed to what's happening, they're going to go through and follow with this anyways because they don't want to be branded a shithead or a weakling. They don't want to be looking weak, and they're going to do this simply under the peer pressure of trying to look strong, trying to look like the stoic military figure. Okay, right down here, I want you to, as you focus on this one, understand what he means by my Jew. Okay, this is again is an example of the dehumanization that took place during the Holocaust. It's like you're talking about my dog or my goat. It's not just your goat, it's a human being, but he's referring to them as my Jew. He also talks about the struggles of the old man as he's walking into the forest where he consistently kept falling. How he walked up, he was late when he got there. Everyone else in his group to be murdered was already killed. He falls to the ground, and this man, August Zorn, just shoots him on the spot right there. It's kind of, again, the rationale behind why you leave the elderly in their homes and kill them there versus marching them out into the forest. Okay, right through here, this is talking about the citizens, they're realizing they're killing their fellow citizens, okay? This man right through here, he starts talking to his individuals as he's marching them out to the forest because he realizes they're Germans, okay? They're not Poles, they're German Jews who happen to be living in Josepho. He's marching them out and having a conversation. This kind of goes against that narrative being pushed by the Nazis that the Jews were subhuman. So just imagine this for a second. If you were in Kegler's position, how you're marching these individuals, a mother and her daughter, out into the forest, and you start talking to them, realizing that you're about to murder them. And imagine what's going through the mind of that mother and that daughter as they're conversing with this man who is going to kill them in a matter of minutes. Again, this kind of real, just barbarity is about the only word I can really put it in right through here on the next page. Okay, right through here. This one I especially asked to be relieved because a man next to me shot so impossibly. Apparently he always aimed his gun too high, producing terrible wounds in his victims. In many cases, the back of victims' heads were torn off, so the brain sprayed all over. I simply couldn't watch it any longer. This is an individual who is wanting to step out, not necessarily because he was opposed to the killing of innocent people, but because this is too gruesome for him to watch. He's tired of watching brains splattered all over the place. He just doesn't want to be there anymore. So again, he's stepping out, but he's stepping out for a different reason than others are going to be stepping out for. On to the next section right through here. This is going to show, again, the total lack of decency. The fact that they would not bury the bodies and just leave them in the forest after this massacre. The Nazis were very, very fond of just avoiding human decency altogether. They believed that Jews were subhuman and that Jews did not deserve any respect at all. Thankfully, many of these bodies would have been buried later once the Nazis had left the town by the locals going out and burying the bodies, showing some respect to their fellow citizens and to those who have just been murdered, their fellow humans. Unfortunately, though, this is not always the case. Some of them were left to simply decompose or be eaten by animals out in the forest. Again, really ridding them of all humanity that they would have had. The last bit of humanity these Jews would have had, sadly, was that sense of composure they had in the marketplace before being marched out, forced to lay down, and shot in the back of the head. Right through here, okay, this is the story of the 10-year-old girl who comes out of the forest, bleeding from the head, who is brought to Trapp and says she should remain alive. This is the one act of human decency that Trapp shows on this day. It's most definitely certain that others around him would have preferred to simply shoot this girl because she had already been shot as she was bleeding from the head. But Trap kept her and let her remain alive. We don't know what happened to her later on through the war, but the fact of the matter is that Trap on this day did show some sign of human decency. Very, very little, and certainly not enough to make up for the horrors he committed, but there was some sign of human decency by Trap on this day. Again, Trap in this section is refusing to accept responsibility for his action. The alcohol is given, as was it previously, to help them forget about what happened, but this isn't going to work at all. The men know what they're doing is wrong, and they do it anyways. Trap's going to ask the men not to talk about it, but they do not need encouragement. They don't want to talk about what happened. They're going to get back, and they're just going to basically drink and try to sleep. And that's something they really can't even do because they realize what they did was so brutal and so horrific. Even the large amounts of alcohol are not allowing them to forget. Lastly, Kate, right through here, Jews feared that another massacre was imminent. Word of what was happening spread quickly. Jews in other villages around Poland realized what happened in Józefów was probably going to happen to them. Non-Jews realized what was happening was probably going to happen in their town. And everyone knew that this was eventually going to happen. And that really kind of sums up the end of this brutal chapter, okay? A lot of different things to discuss right through there. This is the memorial in the forest where this massacre took place. As you can see right through here, it's written in Polish, memorializing all those individuals who were murdered by Police Battalion 101 on this day, led by Major Wilhelm Trapp. So again, just kind of understand what happened here, focus specifically on those individual sections that I focused on for you, and understand what happened here. The goal of this is to understand the real severity of what actually happened during the Holocaust, and how ordinary men can stand up and do some horrible, horrible, extraordinarily evil things. Lastly, there's a series of discussion questions I'll need you to be answering. They're going to be posted on Google Classroom. Answer them in paragraph form. Question 1, was Major Trapp responsible for the actions of Police Battalion 101, or was he simply following orders? And number 2, why do you think it is important to learn about events like this from history? Why should we focus on what happened in the past? Why should we focus on the brutality of something like the massacre at Józefów by Police Battalion 101? Why is that important? Answer those in paragraph form on Google Classroom, and you'll be good to go. If you have any questions, please comment down below, or you can get a hold of me as well. Otherwise, I will talk to you later. See ya.